Okay, so we're going to continue on with some PHP. The first thing that we've run into with Chrome is that it loves to cache stuff almost as badly as Internet Explorer. But we found a nice way to do that. If you hit Control-Shift-I, it brings up the WebDev options. And in the bottom, there's this little settings gearbox. And we want to disable the cache. That's what we want. Because for development, we always want to make the browser go back to this, go to the source, right? Matrix, go to the source. Got to go to the original page because we're changing it all the time. So that should be it. That's good.
That's something you would want to turn back off for checking.
For general browsing, you want to have the cache on, sure. But almost always in Firefox, it's easy to disable the cache with the WebDev toolbar. So there we go. All right, so I want to talk a little bit more. The assignment says to break up your site and have pages for each of your PHP sites, and they're all going to be including these, what I call partials, which is what Rails calls them, partial pieces of PHP code. And so right now we've only broken it up into a header and a footer, and the header didn't include on the nav. So the nav had its own partial here, and the header didn't include on that somewhere up here, right here. So we included the nav inside of an included header. And you can nest those as far deep as you want. Now, one thing we want to have change on every site, every page, is the title of the page. The title is in the head of the document. And so we want that to be, that is used in SEO, search engine optimization. So we want the title to change for every page that we have. So one way to do that is to make that a variable. I can say, let's put a variable in here. The problem is what am I displaying right now? What is this stuff? It's HTML, right? So when I switch to go to PHP, I have to tell the PHP interpreter to switch to PHP so I can look at variables. So I can't just put a variable here, $page title, because it will come out as $page title. If I reload my page now, it'll say $page title. See that? So I need to switch into PHP interpreter, and to do that, I have to say $PHP. Now I'm in PHP. I can do PHP type stuff, and I need to switch out of it again to go back to normal HTML. So now when I look at this again and reload my page, it'll have nothing, right? Because $page title is defined as what? Blank. There's nothing there. And by default, variables that have no value associated with them end up being empty strings or zeros or whatever it is in context. So, but it's now set up that I can, if I set that variable, that will change whenever this page is loaded. So where do you think I would set that variable to be? Where? In the page that I'm looking at, right? So in our blogs page, for instance, if I defined it here, what would happen? Very good. So this page title is being set after I've required the whole header. The header is using the value of page title, which isn't defined yet, and then it will define it, and by then it's too late. So order is important. Just like in programming, we're telling it one thing at a time to do. So I need to define my page title and then require my header that has that variable in its header. So if I upload that and reload here, my header should say, come on. Come on. I'm probably not on the, no, I'm on the blogs.
You also need to echo it.
That's true. Good point. So why is it not coming up?
You didn't echo it?
So all I did was put this here. It's not telling it to print it out to the screen, right? Very good. See, I did that on purpose. So I need to print that to the screen. So I call echo. Echo, echo. And that should be better. There we go. Now we get blogs with a bunch of bangs at the end. All right. So what we did was in my blogs page, I defined a variable. Then in my template page, my header, I echoed that variable out. So that way I can, on every page, have a different page title that's page specific. We want them all to be a little different. And this is one way to do that, where you have the title of your site followed by something that's variable. And if there's nothing there, that still stays the same. What's another way to do that? If I wanted the entire page title to be dynamic, okay, but I want to have something there, right? So if I go to my index page, I haven't defined that on that page yet. And I reload this. Come on. I'm not loading the right page here. Just a second. So I'm on dev, right? Dev. My dev site. I want to delete my index.html file. So I know I'm not loading that one. Now it will load my index.php if it's there. And now you see I have no title in my document. It just shows the URL. There's no title. If I look at the source, the page title is blank. See that? So that's not good. I've got to have a title at least. So I want to define some default thing that gets displayed here. So what's one way to do that? There you go. Now we're thinking. So in all languages, we have control statements that allow us to do, and if then else are very common in every language. So we have an if statement. I can say if. And in PHP, I have to surround things with parentheses. I have to surround my Boolean expression, which is a true or false expression, has to be in parentheses. That's why when I teach the Ruby class, I put the parentheses in there, because almost every language has that. And when you're switching back and forth, it's a pain to try to remember that. So I need some Boolean expression. If something happens, then I want to do something. Else, I want to do something else. All right? So if something is set, I want to do something. If there's nothing set, I want to echo out my default title, which was whatever, Principato, fine Italian cooking. Cuisine, okay, good. All right, fine Italian cuisine. So that will be printed out if this ends up being false. So this statement gets executed if it's true. This one gets executed if it's false. So what do I need to check? Right, so I want to look at my page title variable and see if it has something in it. If my page title, I can do it a bunch of ways. If it equals an empty string, then I want to echo out well, there's lots of ways to do that. I'm going to switch this now. The problem is that if I'm empty, I'm going to print out fine Italian cuisine. Otherwise, I'm going to print the value of my fine Italian cuisine followed by the page title. All right, so that's one way to do it. I could switch that around and make it not equal, all kinds of ways to do that.
So if you throw a variable inside a string, it automatically escapes.
Yes. When I put a variable inside of a double quoted string, it automatically interprets this and converts it to a string and makes one big string with it. So that's very common in PHP. I don't have to add the strings together. Remember I did that on my index,
Yeah.
well, it's gone now, my test page, where I can put it inside of a string or I can use these concatenation variables to do that. So,
Still have Ruby.
yeah, I know. It's tough to go back and forth with the languages, sure. All right. So I want to take away my echo page title. So now I'm switching into PHP. I can do some if-then-else type statements and switch out of PHP and go back to just printing out the rest of my HTML. So you'll see this a lot in code where we're switching in and out of HTML as we define our pages. So that's one way. Let's make sure that works. So now I have fine Italian cuisine. So that means that my page title was not set. So if I go to blogs, though, my page title is set to blogs. So my if statement is working. If nothing is set, it displays this default value. If something is set, it displays the actual page value itself. Now there's different ways to determine if a variable is empty or not, or has an empty string. There's a method called empty as well. I can call empty, which is used a lot. If this variable is empty, I want to do this. This returns a true or false statement. That's a Boolean expression. So let's go look that up in our PHP. Remember php.net/empty. Takes me right to the value. And you can look at the documentation. It takes any variable as a parameter, and it returns what value? A Boolean expression, all right? So it's going to return a true or false based on what the variable has in it. Okay? And this is an important piece. A variable is considered empty if it does not exist or its value equals false. Okay? So that means that if we haven't defined that variable yet, that's considered empty. That's okay. We can look to see if a variable is even there yet or not. And variables are defined, come into existence, and go out of existence on a page-by-page basis. Remember that the HTTP protocol is stateless. Remember what I said, what stateless means? That means that each page is an entity unto itself. When I load a page, everything else, the server forgets about me, and I have to use some cookies or something to let them know that I'm still here. So when this page gets created, let's start from the top. If I go to the blogs page and they ask for blogs.php, it starts out and it says, okay, here's some page, here's a variable that's set, and that's set for this particular page. Then I'm going to require some templates, so that variable is still set. Page title is still set and is available in scope inside of these PHP includes as well. It's still available here. It's still available at the end of the page. I could still echo this out if I wanted to, and it would still show up in the page, albeit in a weird place. Probably won't even show. Here we go. So it does show my page title at the very end, outside of the HTML block. If I look way down, it's way down here at the bottom, at the end of my HTML. So the variable, after this page is loaded and sent to the browser, this variable goes away. It's no longer set. I cannot have a global variable in PHP except through the use of sessions, which we'll talk about later. There's no way to set a global variable for every page. I have to define it every time this page gets loaded. Everybody see that? Every single time I request blogs.php, I'm resetting this page variable to something. All right? Does that make sense? No way to have a global variable. Without sessions, right? Sessions are our global variables. You can think of them that way. Any questions on that so far? Yes?
Can you just check the variable in the if statement instead of the empty?
Yeah, there's lots of ways to do that. And if we go back to our, header, I could just say if page title, like that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That should do the same thing. Again, I have a.
I think it would be the reverse, though.
Yeah, in my case, I'd have to say.
Not page title. Yeah.
Yeah, that should work. Yeah. So page title isn't defined, so it's false or an empty string, and so not page title if there's no page title. I try to avoid this kind of a if statement. I would reverse my pages. I would make it better like this. If the page title is there, do something positive. Otherwise, do the negative of that. I think that's a little cleaner. Trying to read negative if statements is tough, I think. Pardon me? Yeah, you get to ternary operator, sure. We'll get to those later. So we can do if statements here. That's a control block. Part of the requirements for coming into the class was hopefully that you knew programming. So I'm just showing you the syntax for this. If I have a single statement, this is very similar to JavaScript. Who's had JavaScript here? Not too many people. So if I had a single statement, this is one single statement, I can do this without any other symbols. If I wanted to do two things inside of this if block here, I'd have to use curly braces. I have to put curly braces around the block of code. And this is the way I would define it. I might do something like echo, this is cool. All right, if I had more than one statement, I have to have curly braces around them. One statement is fine without the curly braces. So ideally, I typically use curly braces anyway, even if there's only one statement, because a lot of times as I'm developing the code, I'm adding code anyway. I might come back and add some more lines in here, and it's already set for me. It doesn't save time or anything to leave them out. So how would I make this into a block on the else statement? Another curly bracket, right? Curly brace here, into the curly brace at the bottom. Okay, so that's a lot like Ruby, a lot like every other language, C#, C, that they're very similar in these cases. JavaScript. And a statement is defined as a line of code followed by a semicolon. So the problem with this is, which is also why I recommend you put every statement on its own line, this is actually legal. But what happens in the block? If I don't have the curly braces there, I should get an error because there's two things in here, two statements, and it actually shows me an error. It's expecting some statement here, and I will get an error when I reload my page. Syntax unexpected else statement. It didn't know what to do. This else now is standing out in the wind. It doesn't know what to do with that. So that's another good reason to use curly braces all the time. And always put every line on its own line, every statement on its own line. Or you'll end up with these kind of problems. This is a very common bug in both JavaScript and PHP, having multiple lines in this if statement like this. All right. Any questions on the if statement? Everybody understand what a Boolean expression is? If not, please ask. Please ask. Boolean, it's a true or false statement. We're going to use a lot of these, so you really got to understand this. Yeah, if it's your second language, it's the same thing. You're learning syntax, a different way of writing an if statement than Ruby does, or a different way than writing it in JavaScript. A lot of these languages are very similar, though. All right. So let's go back to my any questions on the variable data type. Title, dynamic title that I have. See, I wrote that code for you. Isn't that nice?
Congratulations.
You're all done.
It's not that bad.
It's not yet.
So far. So far, it's very reminiscent of Rails.
Yeah,
So far.
but it's not.
I know. Because of that look on your face, I can tell it's definitely not.
So let's look at some other control structures. We know the if then else statement. I can just have an if statement. If something, then do a statement. And so this is also a very common problem. Continue on with the program. What is wrong with this statement here? There's no end, but that's fine. PHP doesn't care if there's an end or not. There's no curly braces. So you're assuming by the way I indented this that these two statements are under the if. So if this was true, I'm going to execute both of these statements, right? You're assuming that because I indented it that way. That's why indentation is so important. The problem is this is valid and will not give me an error because PHP thinks that this is what you actually wrote. Okay? Do you see that? This statement, it will, if the something is true, it will generate this statement, and then it will always do this statement. But that is the source of a lot of bugs because you think, well, doggone it, it should only do it if it's inside this if statement, which is another reason to use curly braces, no matter what. That makes it very clear now. It's like using parentheses in a math statement. I think this is important to do that because that's actually caught me before when I'm lazy and forget the braces. And it's hard to find because you're indenting it right. You know, it looks okay to me. And your brain doesn't see that it's really outside of the block there. Anybody see that? Any questions on that? Stupid PHP. All right. That's a good one. So there is no such thing as an end statement in PHP. This curly brace is the end statement. So it's a lot like Ruby. If you didn't use a end or a do block, you'd use the curly braces instead. It's a lot like that. A lot like JavaScript. All right, so let's do, we can also do some while loops. I can say while some value is true, some Boolean expression again, do some statement. All right? Again, this is the same thing. I might think through indentation that this statement would be executed inside my while loop. So let's do a concrete one. While x less than 2, and then we'll say echo x followed by a break, and then we'll say echo x plus 2 followed by a break. Now, again, what do the dots mean? Candy? Is that what you said? Concatenation, right. I thought I heard candy. All right. Where's my, is it? No, I'm looking for commenting it out. There it is. All right. So now, what do you think this is going to do? You think so?
Isn't x 0 already?
Yeah, it's a default 0.
All right. So it's a default 0, but let's, my loop will never end. Right? So now what's going to happen? So let's see what happens.
We didn't answer quickly.
I got to go to my index page.
It's on your test.
It's on your test.
That's what I said. I have to go to my test page.
No.
All right, so we're down here at the end. I've got all this other junk in here. Let's just delete all of this stuff so I don't have to worry about it. All right, so I get a 2, and then a 4, and then stuff down here in my include me, which I'm going to take out too. All right, why did it do that? Why did I get a 2? All right, so the first time through, yes?
Yeah, because it didn't run the second statement until the while loop finished.
Right. This is, even though I indented it this way, this statement is outside the loop. Because a while statement only takes one statement, unless I use braces around it. So this is what's actually happening. And because the $x wasn't defined yet, it's defined as 0. So I can add 0 plus 1, stuff it into my x again. So now my x is 1. 1 is still less than 2, so do my loop again. I add 1 to my 1, I get 2. X is now 2. Is 2 less than 2? No. It's less than or equal, but it's not less than 2. So it falls out of my loop, goes on to the next one, prints out the value of x, which now has 2 in it, and then prints out the value of x adding 2 to it. So I get 2 and 4. So to make this, in reality, what I really wanted to do was to maybe print out all of these. I would put the brace down here. Now, it doesn't matter about indenting. It's going to print out 1, 3, 2, 4, okay, which is right. So you really have to be careful, which is why I can't stress enough indenting is important. So that's a while loop. While some expression is true, do all of these statements within the braces. And I can print out HTML. I can do anything I want inside of those while loops, just like any other language. Yes. Now in PHP, unlike Ruby, they have this concept of an incrementer. And I can do ++ like this, which is a C#. It's a JavaScript function. It's a C function. Those are common. Ruby doesn't have that. They don't have an auto increment. This also works. I can do a +=1 or +=2. But a ++ by itself means to add 1 to the variable and stuff it back inside the variable. Yes. Minus will work as well. So this should work the same way. Yep, same way. Yeah, plus equals is the same thing. All right, any questions on that? Maybe for those that haven't had as much programming? Questions, please? No questions? All right, because formatting is so important, one of the things I love about PHP Storm is that I can customize the way PHP formats things for me. They have a function up here called, what is it? Where is it? Reformat code, okay? So I can reformat code, and I want to reformat the entire file, and it goes through and formats it. Just happens to be exactly the way I write it, except for I like my while statements like this. All right? I like my parenthesis next to the while and a space after the parenthesis. That's because I've been coding it that way for 20 years. That's the way I like it. I like to see it that way. So if I do it again, and it's Control Shift L, I think. Is it L? No, it's not L. Control Alt L. Don't show this again. Run. It switches it back to how I don't like it, right? So PHP has this really cool function in here, which is the code style. And I can look at, for the PHP code, I can do all kinds of stuff about how I like my things to happen. So typically, we don't use tab characters at all. We like to use tabs. We like to use spaces instead of tabs, so I uncheck that. Why do you think that's the case?
Because 4 spaces is different than a tab.
Right. Depending on the environment that you go to, it could be different. So we'd like to work in spaces. I can have spaces. Look at all these options I have. If I want a space before my declaration parentheses, if I check that, see what happens over here? It puts a space here. See the difference? Takes and removes that space. I like it like that. For my function call parentheses, you can see down here, this part is going to change. Okay, I don't like it like that. I like my parentheses right next to each other. My if statement, same thing. I like it right next to each other. But then around the operators, I want to have some spaces. So you can go through and customize the heck out of this sucker. And I want, where is it? I want a space here, and I think I must already have that. Yeah, so there's a function called parentheses. I like the space there. The declaration parentheses, I like it there. In my for block, I like it there. In my if, see my if, I want a space back in there. My fors, my whiles, see the while changes, switches and catches, I like all of those to be having a space there. So when I apply that and rerun this, what was that? What was it again? Control Alt L. All right. It left a space here, so I'll have to go fix that. But it fixed my spaces after my parentheses. You see that? So since you're going to write a lot of code, formatting it is important, and a lot of bugs can be found just by formatting your code correctly, which is why I drilled it into you in Ruby. This function lets you customize how you want the code to look. And then if you forget and forget this like this, and you format it, it formats it correctly, and then you say, oh, okay, that's not really in my loop anymore. That fixed it right away, and I could see that, oh, darn it, I need to add my parentheses, or my braces. I add my brace at the top, add my brace at the bottom, reformat, and it indents everything for me. I don't have to spend a lot of time indenting my code. They're in RubyMine as well. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't tell you that. All right, any questions on any of that? Tomorrow I'm going to start working on forms. How to send some data from the browser to the user. And as we do this, you'll start to see more if statements and while loops and things like that. But I think that's enough for now. Question? Oh yeah, we were going to show that real fast. I'm currently running in my deploy here. Where is it? Deployment is going to my dev site. So let's say I'm all done, everything's happy and working. I want to upload this entire thing to my production site. First of all, I'd have to make sure that I have a deployment server created. So in my deployment, I have a dev site and I have a production site. All right, and so they're different based on the URLs here. So if I want to upload now, so the first thing would be to copy and paste that and make sure that your production site is correct. And then all you have to do is right-click on the entire folder and say upload to, and I can choose where I want to upload to. I want to upload to production. It's going to say, okay, where's your password for that? And it's going to find all the files and upload everything all in one step. So it should be easy for you to deploy from your dev to production, because we're going to overwrite typically everything on production anyway. We're deploying a new version of the software. So just ship it all up there. Let it do its thing. Okay, done. Isn't that great?
And if you have existing HTML, will it get rid of it?
It will overwrite existing files, but it will leave files up there on your production that you might have deleted here. So that's what I was saying. Sometimes you might want to come up here and just, yeah, you might want to just delete all of these. Delete everything on the server, and that's going to go delete everything, and then upload everything again. Upload to production.
I'm going to be here a while. It's going to take forever to upload.
It shouldn't take you a couple minutes. Pardon me? Okay. Okay, no more questions. Stopping.